Guys. Let's go. We'll go Matt Preem. I see your hand there. There we go.
Yeah, Dana, now that you've had more opportunity to prepare for UCLA, is what stands out about the Bruins and I guess the challenge that they're going to present for you guys?
Well, first of all, their experience is very good. You know, they're only trying to add the one player from Kentucky, Juzan, who's can really score. You know, Johnny's got experience with Kentucky and now UCLA, so he's an experienced player. But I think that's their biggest thing is they got everybody back. And, you know, so they go 9 deep, 10 deep with experience, physicality. They're very talented. You know, the two guys inside, Hill and Riley, will give us more problems now without Dante. So a lot of concerns with their experience. They're a tough team, physical team. Lost 2 games, you know, to San Diego State and Ohio State, 2 very good teams. Beat a good Marquette team. So we know it's going to be tough. They're picked to win the league, so we're going to have to play good.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Dana, UCLA is always kind of one of the marquee games of the year in Eugene and at Matthew Knight Arena. How strange is it going to be to take them on in an empty facility?
It'll be different, Chris, that's for sure. You know, we've always had, you know, solid crowds, and you know, Arizona and UCLA are the 2 names in our conference that draw national attention. You know, we're trying to get into that conversation, but to do that, we need to win on a consistent basis for a long time. You know, you look at those 2 programs, what they've done for long periods of time traditionally. And, you know, that's something that takes 20 years to accomplish, you know, 30 years. And so we've still got a long ways to go. You know, we're trending that way, but we've got to do a lot more in the next 10 years to try to get to that level. So, but UCLA has done a great job over the years. Obviously, their national championships with Coach Wooden. Ben took them to a number of Final Fours, and Mick's doing a great job. So we're going to have to play well to get them. And without the crowd, it will be unusual because, you know, part of our win streak that we got going now is directly due to the crowd. You know, the pit crew over there making, you know, picking us up when we're not playing well. The fans in the stands, you know, it does add something to the game, Chris. And, you know, without them, you know, our players have to self-motivate. We have to draw from our own energy. And, you know, it's sometimes a lot easier with that crowd pulling you along.
All right, we'll go to James next.
And I have one related to that and one to the game. Was curious because you guys get all kinds of analytics that we don't get. I've been noticing it seems like, at least anecdotally, there's less timeouts taken during games, in part because because you're not controlling the crowd. It's not there. That part of the emotion's not there. Is this just happenstance, or are you seeing on average that there's just less timeouts even yourself is taking because there's not a road crowd there to take out of the game?
You know, I haven't studied it, James. You know, the communication is a lot easier, you know, so like at times we took a timeout so that we could change something. But now if there's a dead ball, you know, you can yell it out pretty easy, you know, and in previous years, that may not be the case. And so I haven't studied it, but in our case, you know, we haven't gone on the road a lot, but yeah, I used to take timeouts on the road, and they hit a couple buckets in a row and the crowd's going, and you just go, hey, let's just settle this thing down for a while here, you know, and get the crowd to settle down. And you don't have those breaks like that. You won't have to take timeouts to settle the crowd down. You might have to take timeout to settle your team down, but the crowd definitely over the years, you take timeouts on the road to try to get the crowd out of it. And definitely we've had runs here with our presses and that where we get 2 or 3 baskets in a row where the other team was taking a timeout to try to get the pit crew and everybody else to settle down. So you're probably accurate there in saying that there are fewer timeouts because of crowd. But again, the communication, James, has just been a lot easier, with nobody in the building, yelling out sets. You got to try to disguise them. Now we're getting in conference play. It'll be a lot different because conference teams, we've changed some things, but there's a lot of things we're still doing that we've done in previous years. And so the conference teams are going to pick those things up a lot quicker.
Then to the game specifically, what has been the biggest adjustment to UCLA under Mick, Dana, in that offensive efficiency in Ken Palm? I think they're in the top 20 nationally, maybe even top 15, but in tempo, I know it's not a stat you look at a lot necessarily, but they're much, much slower under Mick than they were previously. So what have been some of the things that you've seen that have changed in this program the last year and a half?
Well, we've only played them once, but, watching their style, they have good scores, but going back to your analytics, 9% of their possessions are in transition, which is a low number. They go off steals and that, but they're not really looking to push it as hard as they have in previous years, especially with Lonzo Ball and some of those teams. We're really looking to push it and getting a lot more shots in transition. But mixed teams always guard and they always know what they want to execute. They're running a lot of sets. We went over film yesterday with the team and going over all their sets, and I think some of the guys fell asleep about halfway through it because it was a long film set. So we've got to try to cut it down and show them what we think they'll run most against us. Without Dante, they'll probably try to go to Riley and Hill a lot more, and so we got to be prepared for that. But I agree with you. They're pushing it when they have the opportunities, but otherwise they're trying to grind it out and get the shot they want. They do execute well, and with that veteran of a team, I think their execution is going to get better and better, and it's pretty good now.
Okay, we'll go to Max from Scoop Duck next.
Yeah, Dana, I know that you guys are expecting to get Frank available pretty soon. Just talk about kind of what you've seen from him since he's been in Eugene, and I imagine it's pretty timely with Dante's injury.
Frank had practiced for the first time yesterday, and so it'll take him some time to get up to speed, but he's a talented young man, a little raw offensively, but man, is he, if the first day is any indication of his work ethic, we're really excited. I couldn't have been any more pleased with what he did yesterday for a first day, just stepping on the court and getting it going. I think he's got a big time future, especially if that work ethic is what I think it's going to be. He's really a nice young man. We've been so fortunate to get some young men from different countries, different cultures that are just so easy to work with and so appreciative of everything that the University of Oregon and our basketball program tries to do for them. And Frank's one of those guys that I think is just going to be in it for as long as he's here, working his tail off academically and working his tail off on the court, because he comes from very, a different country, and he's here for a purpose. And he's really focused on what that purpose is to be the best student, best player that he can be.
All right, we'll go to Matt for the next question.
Now you talked about the length of Hill and Riley, but Chris Smith and his importance and just his versatility, how tough you feel like that's matchup that's going to be for your wings?
Well, when he's playing well, it is tougher, because he is very versatile. He can score inside. He can shoot threes. he's a matchup problem with that size. And so no doubt, he's key to what they're doing. And when he plays well, the team really plays well. He struggled in a couple ball games, and they haven't played nearly as well in those games. So we know how important a factor he is. He was a big factor for him last year, and we're going to have to do a good job on him because he is someone who's, like I said, versatile, scores inside out, and at that length and that size is really a matchup problem.
All right, to Chris Hansen now.
Yeah, we've talked quite a bit about UCLA, but what about your team, Dana? What do you like how your team is playing right now, and just kind of your thoughts on where you guys are at this point in the season?
Chris, I thought we got better last week defensively, and now our big challenge would be, to go against a very gifted offensive team. But, we didn't give up nearly as many uncontested shots as we did the previous week, against Eastern Washington and Washington. Did a much better job of contesting shots. Our rotations were much better. We've got to continue that. We had a good practice yesterday. I hope that continues, because defensively, without the rim protection that we've been fortunate to have in years past, we really have to be connected on the perimeter. And our rotations have to be good. We can't let the ball get to the rim as easily as we have, because we don't have Kenny Wooten back there. We don't have Dante now back there. So we've got to protect the rim by not letting them blow by us all the time. And so that's going to be a factor. And I thought we took a big step there. I was really glad that we got our young guys on the floor last week. We got Aaron some time, Jalen some more time, and Luke War. And those three young guys are going to have to play a larger role now, without Will, without Dante. We lose two experienced players there, and those three inexperienced players are going to have to step up. And they're very capable of doing that. But I was glad to get them a few minutes last week, before we get into conference here. And the minutes mean a lot more, and they're thrown into tough situations. It was just good to get them out there for 15 to 20 minutes and get them some time.
Okay, we'll go to James next.
Dana, whether he starts or not is kind of a moot point, but when you're going up against a bigger team, you talked about how well Chandler's been playing off the bench. How do you I would say, like I say, it's less about starting, more about managing his time, because you are thin on the inside and you don't have as much size. So whether he starts or not, if he gets in foul trouble, it's kind of a moot point. How do you just manage his minutes to get through a game with him and be able to get the most out of him, and not let them capitalize and get him in foul trouble?
Well, Chandler's length is going to be really important to us now. Really, the last game was the first game he's been in foul trouble. In fact, I told him he hadn't been fouling enough. I think in the first 5 games, he had 4 fouls. I said, heck, you need to run into somebody more often than that, but his experience is important, James. We need him on the floor. He's got a good feel for what we're doing. I want him to use his length a little bit more, both on the perimeter, to keep guys in front of him and contest shots, and inside to challenge some shots. And so, moving forward without Dante, his role does increase, whether it be guarding on the inside, being more physical. He's got to take a bigger presence for us, in the interior, and, guarding on the perimeter, because we're asking him and a lot of guys to go outside and guard those guys on the perimeter. And so, and I think offensively, his skill level, James, we've got to take advantage of his passing, which I don't think we've done enough of, putting him in a position to make some plays with his passing skills. And so I need to do a better job there, putting him in a position to do that.
Okay, and we'll go back to Chris.
Dana, what are the plans, holiday plans for the team after tomorrow's game? And are they different this year because of this COVID reality that we're living in?
They are a little bit, Chris. I felt it was really important to let the players and their families decide their Christmas plans. Um, you know, selfishly, I'd like them all to stay, but I don't think this year I can do that. I never have before. I've always let the players go home for Christmas. I think it's an important time that they get away for a few days and spend some time with their families. I think we have about half the team going and half the team staying. Obviously, with Cameroon and Mali and the Dominican, it's kind of hard for some of those guys to get home. So I think a lot of those guys will be with us. But I just want the guys to make their own decision with their families. And this year in particular, I think that's even more important. I'm staying, the coaches are staying in town. So the players that don't go home, I hope will spend some time with us. We can spread it out and each take one or two players. And so they're not quite so isolated in their rooms all by themselves for Christmas. We want them, to have a Christmas and spend some time with the coaches at least. But the players that do go home, we're just asking them to be very careful. We understand you want to go home and see your families, but fellas, there's nothing we can do if you test positive, you're going to have to sit out. So we'd like you to use some discipline with friends, and that you just can't go back and hang out. We're sending you home, and your parents are bringing you home to see them. So hopefully they'll spend some time with their families, use great decision making, and come back, and we'll get everybody tested, and we'll go from there. But what a stressful year for him, Chris. And I know some programs are having everybody stay. I just didn't feel like, that was my decision. I wanted the families to make that decision, each player to make that decision. They know that they're putting themselves a little bit at risk, and we understand that as coaches. But what's most important here is that the players and the families feel good about Oregon and their ability to make their own decision. And so that's why I decided that we go that way.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, James.
I was going to ask you after the game, Dana, but we'll just sneak it in here then. So then are you done with non-conference, or will you try to get a seventh one in sometime during league play, like maybe on one of the OSU weeks when in the midseason game when there's only the one game that week, or are you going to just settle at 6? Because I think most of the league is settling around 5 or 6.
We're going to keep it open, James. If I'm not going to schedule anything right now, but because I'm keeping those weeks with Oregon State for conference games to make up conference games. But let's just say that we get into it and it's obvious we're not going to be able to make up all our games, and somebody's on protocol and we're not. Picking one up during the season isn't totally out of the realm of possibilities. Okay, we're going to keep it open. And, if TV were to call and say the LA schools, we couldn't play them on a particular weekend, we got a weekend open, and TV calls and says, hey, some other school's open, are you interested? Because we got those calls. Fox called us on a game, during the thing that we'd already just scheduled a game. Otherwise, I'd have probably taken it, So we're going to get some calls if something like that happens. And too hard to predict. It's been a crazy year so far, and so hard to predict what's going to happen in January, February. But I told Josh, and all the staff, just keep their ears open. And our biggest goal is to get 20 conference games in, though, James, to answer your question. That's our biggest goal. And so we will save the weeks that we play Oregon State open for any conference games to be made up. And the only way we'd go out of conference is if it was just clear we couldn't get the 20 conference games in.
Okay, any other questions for Coach today? I think we're good. Thanks, Coach. We'll see you in a bit for the ESPN call, and everybody else will see you tomorrow.